New 72 Radio, the voice, views, and visions of the collective.
Good evening, everyone. This is Mary Burger, and welcome to Diva Talk. Today is Thursday, June 23rd, 2016, 7 p.m. Pacific time. And welcome. I'm really glad you're here joining us. Even if you are watching or listening to this a week from now, I'm really glad that you decided to tune in. So how have you all been? I just need to take a breath. My past 2 weeks since the last show has been crazy busy, crazy wild. It's all good stuff, but it's been crazy. My business is going in a new direction, which I'm really excited about, and I've spent the past 2 weeks building that and putting pieces together and bringing new clients on board, and it's super exciting. So my name is Mary Burger, and I own a business in the Pacific Northwest, specifically Vancouver, Washington, and my business is called ComputerDiva. I am a computer consultant. I work with small businesses and individuals to help them navigate the waters of their technology and help them make it work for them. With that said, my business model for the past 8 years that I've owned this business has been break fix. Your computer breaks, I fix it. It's getting a little tiresome, I think, for some of my clients to keep going through the same cycles, and they definitely are cycles. And what I've learned in doing this business for the past 8 years is most computer issues can be boiled down to just a few things. Number one, it could be a hardware issue. Your hardware has just gotten too old. And contrary to what a lot of people would like to think, your hardware is not going to last forever. I get calls from people, prospective clients, who say, well, my computer is starting to run a little bit slow. Maybe you can help me speed it up. And one of the first questions I always ask them is, how old is your computer? Oh, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years old. And then when they really sit and think about it, then the real answer comes in, and you know, it could be 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. I've had some people say my computer is 12 years old. And to those people I say, no, I cannot speed up your computer. There's nothing I can do to speed up your computer. And that really confuses a lot of people. Why is it that I have this box that's sitting on my desk, or this laptop that's sitting on my desk? It's a solid piece of machinery. Nothing has changed in the machinery. Why does it slow down? Why does it stop working? Well, in a perfect world, we would not have the computers, the boxes, hooked up to the internet that introduces all sorts of outside forces into your computer. If you and I could live in a bubble where we are not affected by the outside world, by outside forces, outside influences, we'd probably be perfectly healthy as well. If we had pure oxygen, pure air to breathe, we had pure natural food to eat, and we weren't influenced by the smog and bad forces out in the world, negative energies from people out there, we'd probably be healthy too, and we would never wear out. Computers are the same way. And so what happens is you've bought this piece of hardware, you've put it on your desk, and 5 or 6 years later, it starts to really slow down. You haven't, in your mind, made any changes to it, but yet you have it hooked up to a high-speed internet line, and you are going out to these various websites. The software that you use, which is called a browser, that software is constantly changing. Every year there's newer versions. Every year, probably, you know, every 2 months, the makers of the browsers are updating that software. So the software continues to be updated through the years that you're using your computer, but your hardware stays the same. So you've got this hardware technology that you bought 5 or 6 years ago with software that some of the software may never have even been developed at the time you bought your computer. And now you're trying to put it on your computer, and your computer just doesn't know what to do with it. So your computer does have to be replaced. My guideline is, if you are in a business environment where you are using your computer 8+ hours a day, nonstop, 3 years is the guideline. If you're a home user and you're just using the computer to get on the internet, maybe check your email, maybe play some games, you could probably get a good 5 years of life out of it. And then you're going to start to be disappointed with your experience with that computer. So, so that's kind of what I have to say about that. Is just, I just find it fascinating that, that the perception from a lot of people is your computer is going to last forever, and it's not. So that's the number one thing that, that I find in my business is hardware does wear out, and you have to replace that hardware. The second thing that I find is that if you don't keep the software on your computer up to date, you are leaving yourself wide open for viruses. The viruses, most of the viruses in the world, and if you've listened to my show before, or you've listened to me talk, you've heard me talk, you know that I say that most of the viruses in this world are caused by organized crime in Eastern Europe. Yeah, those guys over there are busy. And people say, well, what do they have to gain by creating these viruses? And it's big money. It's big money. I will give you an example. And I know this particular client is not listening to this show, and I won't say names, but I had a call 2 days ago from a client who I'd say, I think it was back in March. Back in March, this client called me, and she said to me, she said, Mary, you know, I got this pop-up on my screen, and it said, oh my God, I had a gazillion viruses on my computer, and I had to call this 800 number. And if I didn't do it in 5 minutes, my computer was going to, I don't know, blow up or whatever. So she called the number, and she gave them her credit card number. She let them onto her computer, and she finally figured out that, you know, something's not right here. And she hung up from them, and she called me. And I had to reverse everything that these people did on her computer. Well, she called me 2 days ago. Same story. Even though I said to her, I said, Jane Doe, because I'm not going to say names, never, ever, ever call those 800 numbers. Well, she did it because they make it sound so legitimate. So if you don't keep the software on your computer up to date, your operating system, your Windows operating system, all of your plugins, such as your Java plugin, which is a small plugin that allows websites to display certain types of content, your Adobe Reader, your Adobe Flash, your Adobe Air, your iTunes, all sorts of third-party software that you've got on your system. If you don't keep those up to date, the people, the thugs in Eastern Europe who are creating the viruses, will find security holes in that older piece of software that you're using, and they will worm their way into your computer, and pretty soon, yes, you too will get that pop-up box saying something bad is happening on your computer. And nothing as bad is happening on your computer until you call that 800 number. Most issues with computers come from software that is out of date. So I have found that doing a proactive approach on computers is a lot better than doing a reactive break-fix approach. So I have my new product out called Diva Care, which is a proactive approach to computer maintenance. And so that's what I have been building the past couple of weeks. Oops, hold on a minute. What happened? I lost my screen. How do I get it back? Bear with me. Kelly, is everyone still there? I don't even see my chats. Well, I'm gonna hope that Kelly heard me and she's gonna answer me. And because I can't see the screen anymore, all I see is my desktop, but I'm just gonna keep on going. Kelly will get back to me. So it's kind of disconcerting though. So anyway, that's what I've been working on the past of my business, and really trying to get that built up so that I'm more in a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. And Kelly, since I can't see the chat, if there is something wrong with the video feed, let me know through Facebook chat. All is good, she says. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm moving on. I don't care if I see. So you know, I've been busy doing that, and it's keeping me very busy. So the past 2 weeks has been exhausting but exhilarating all at the same time. So I hope you all have been having a good couple of weeks as well. So there's a lot of things I want to talk to you all about tonight. If you want to ask me a question, there is on your screen, if you're joining us through the video feed, in the upper portion of your screen, there's a little drop-down window. If you move your mouse up there, and there's a space for chat, you can go in and pose a question in the chat room. Kelly will monitor that and let me know. Since I've lost my chat, I can't see it. Or you can call in if you have a question. I'm assuming if everybody's listening or watching live, you've gotten to the video feed. But the number to call in to listen is 415-762-9988. Or we have 646-568-7788. And our meeting number is 590-101-489. Feel free to chat or call and ask any questions you want. And it would be a whole lot of fun if somebody had a couple of questions for me. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit here and talk. So I wanted to talk to you all tonight about Wi-Fi. I deal a lot with Wi-Fi issues and troubleshooting those issues, getting Wi-Fi issues resolved, installing Wi-Fi for my customers, and I want to make sure everybody really knows how Wi-Fi works. So I'm going to go into a little bit of the history of Wi-Fi. There have been several different standards or speeds for Wi-Fi. And the first standard for Wi-Fi was released back in 1997, so quite a bit ago, 19 years ago. It was called the 802.11 standard, and the speed for that was about 2 megabits per second, which is horribly, horribly slow, but it was the first version out there. So, and nobody used it. So in, I'd say early of 1999, they came out with 802.11a, which increased the speed up to 54 megabits per second. And then late that same year in 1999, they came out with 802.11b Wi-Fi. And that may be where the first adopters of Wi-Fi started using it. Not very widespread at that time. Speed was about the same. And then a couple years later, they came out with 802.11g or Wi-Fi G. That's really when Wi-Fi started to kind of bust out and become widespread. The 802.11g standards, still very slow, but it was affordable, and it allowed people to get a Wi-Fi router, put it in their house, and get Wi-Fi in various places. And really the only uses for Wi-Fi back at that time was if you had a laptop and you wanted to use that somewhere else in the house rather than plugging it into your high-speed modem. You could move around the house with your laptop. There were no such things as smartphones back then. Tablets, iPads, iPhones, none of those existed. So we really didn't need a lot of Wi-Fi, but we needed a little bit. So the 802.11g was a really good option. So, then, the birth of the iPhone came out, then the iPad, smartphones, they really, really came into widespread use. And then wireless N technology came out, and that's probably what most people are using right now. That was about 2009, wireless N. Wireless N brought us two different bands for Wi-Fi. There was a 2.4 gigahertz band or frequency that the Wi-Fi signal would travel on. And then there was the 5 gigahertz frequency, which was, just a little bit different of a frequency. And the speeds, about 600 to 900 megabits per second. I mean, really, really decent speeds on the wireless N. 2 years ago, we introduced wireless AC technology. The minimum speeds on that are about 500 megabits per second, and they can go upwards of 1 gigabit per second. So just to kind of put that into perspective, at a Wi-Fi speed of 1 gigabit per second, you can download a 2-hour high-def movie in about 32 seconds, which is pretty awesome. That's some speed there. So, so that's kind of the history of Wi-Fi and the different standards that we had. Wireless A all the way up through wireless AC, which is the latest technology. 2 years ago when AC came out, it was pretty expensive. You were going to spend about $300 for a wireless router. You're still going to spend that kind of money for wireless AC. It can go anywhere between, I'd say, $125 on up to several $100s. But if you need a lot of speed, it's really worth it. A lot of these new Wi-Fi routers will come with antennas, and they almost look like, these huge spaceships with all these antennas just kind of floating around. The beauty of these antennas, and I've seen up to 8 antennas on a wireless router, the wireless AC, is each of those antennas allows a device in your home to connect on the internet through that antenna, and they're getting no interference from any other device in the house because each device hooks onto its own antenna, which is pretty awesome. So you have some pretty good speed there. They're spendy, but if you have a lot of people in the house, it might be worth it. If you are currently on a wireless G router, and believe me, I see people out there who are still using a wireless G router, you need to replace it. And I have 2 stories to tell you about this. And so the first story happened, it was a friend of mine who, she had gotten this laptop, and every time she turned this laptop on and connected it to the internet, everybody else got disconnected. And, I couldn't figure out why. It was like, there's nothing wrong with this laptop. This laptop is fine. It was freshly rebuilt. It was a good laptop. But every time that particular laptop connected to the Wi-Fi in the house, everybody else got disconnected. So I thought, well, maybe their Wi-Fi will only handle so many devices. Maybe there's a limitation. So I dug into it and found out that that house is running on a wireless G router. So we replaced it with a wireless N router, and from that point on, everything is working perfectly. Nobody gets dropped off the internet, which is good. So the second story I have, and this one was really recent. By recent, I mean probably in the last month. I was in a client's office, an attorney, and we were down in his lower level of the office in the conference room, and we were setting up laptop, and we were trying to get Skype running on it. The whole premise was being that, if he's traveling around, he wanted to be able to communicate with his customers via Skype. And so we were trying to get that all set up. The customer can come in the office, sit in the conference room, conference with him via Skype. So we were getting that all set up. And but the Skype was running really, really slow. We were having a hard time connecting. And, I guess it just didn't occur to me that somebody would still have a wireless G modem or wireless G router running in their office. So I said to him, I said, where's your wireless router? Let's take a look at it. So he took me upstairs into his office, and, sitting there on the cabinet was his wireless router, and it was indeed a wireless G router. And I said, well, that's our problem. I said, we need to yank that one out. We need to put a new wireless AC router in here, one with multiple antennas, and we need to get that thing set up, and your Skype will be running beautifully once you do that. We haven't done that yet, and I think we're going to be doing that in a few weeks. But yeah, wireless G is definitely going to cause you all sorts of grief. So it's time to get rid of it. You can still buy lots of wireless N routers. They're really affordable. They can run anywhere from like $40, $45, upwards of a couple $100. So I would definitely suggest, if you don't want to pull the trigger for a big spendy AC router, you can still go wireless N and you're going to be perfectly happy. Somebody asked me recently, and I did some research, how does a Wi-Fi signal travel? The Wi-Fi signal comes off of the Wi-Fi modem and it travels in a straight line. And it can only go so far before the signal will start to weaken and diminish. And it will also, if it encounters a wall, like a wood wall, for instance, the wood in the wall will kind of weaken the signal a little. If it's metal, it will really weaken the signal. Wi-Fi signals can bounce off of objects and go in different directions, but if there was nothing to interfere with it, it's going to go in a straight line. I have a few notes here. So I'm just going to go through these notes based on the wireless technology. So the 802.11a, that signal would go about 115 feet. The 802.11b, same thing, 115 feet, not very far. The 802.11g went about 125 feet. So decent coverage for, a regular size home or apartment. 100 feet, not too bad. The 802.11n will go 230 feet. So the N technology will cover a decent size house. So, if you think about your house and you think about, okay, 100 feet in this direction and 100 feet in that direction and up and down and all four directions, that's quite a ways. So you can get pretty good coverage with 100 feet, but then you're talking about 230 feet. And yeah, you're going to be able to cover your entire house. And the 802.11ac is probably going to be about the same range, 230 feet. So, so calculating that range, like I said, in your house can be tricky because it's going to bounce off of obstacles, doors, windows, what have you. And I guess I would compare this to, if you're sitting in a room and you're talking to somebody in the next room over, and the door is open between the two rooms, your voice is going to carry and it's going to be heard. But you close that door and the person in the other room is going to have a hard time hearing you unless you're shouting. So it's the same thing with your Wi-Fi signal. If you have unobstructed views of where you want that signal to go, you're going to be fine. So the solid wood door, like I said, will weaken a signal. A metal door will weaken a signal. A solid concrete wall is really, really going to weaken a signal. So if you're trying to put Wi-Fi in a concrete building, you've all seen the buildings where they're built out of the concrete blocks all the way around, and then they put the metal walls with the metal rods. I don't know if it's called a rod or not, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Then they put the sheetrock in there. The metal is going to weaken the signal. The concrete walls are really going to weaken it. So trying to get that signal outside of that concrete wall is going to be a little bit difficult. And surprisingly, if you have a really old home and the walls are made of lath and plaster, a lot of times that lath and plaster is wrapped up in chicken wire, and chicken wire is going to kill your Wi-Fi signal. So if you have a house that's at least 60 years old and you've got chicken wire wrapped up inside your walls, good luck with your Wi-Fi, because it's just not going to happen. You're better off with a wired connection. Other things that can hinder that signal is your appliances, your Wi-Fi, your telephone, your baby monitors, your TVs, all the electronic equipment in your house. That is really going to also interfere with your Wi-Fi signal. So when you have a problem with your Wi-Fi, Oftentimes you can put in what is called a booster to take that signal, that weak signal, when it gets to the point, 100 feet or 200 feet out, when it really starts to weaken. And the booster will pick up that signal and strengthen it and throw it out, and extend the range of that signal. So boosters work in a couple of different ways, and I have a really interesting story about a booster. But so with a Wi-Fi booster, you can get the type of booster that will travel through the electrical wires in your house. So you've got your Wi-Fi or your cable modem, your DSL modem, and you've got your Wi-Fi, which is plugged into that, or they might be one and the same. And then you get a booster. You take a booster, you plug it into the electrical circuit, and you put a wire from the booster to the modem. Then you go off to a point in the house where the signal is starting to weaken, and you want that signal to travel even further. So you take that second booster and you plug it into the electrical outlet. And that Wi-Fi signal is now traveling through your electrical wires. It finds the second booster, which then strengthens that signal and throws it out to the rest of your house. So interesting story about that. I don't think I've told this story. And that story is several years ago, when I had my day job, I worked for a company who was a family-owned business. And I ended up doing a lot of IT work for the family members in their homes. So I was asked by my boss if I would, he had just moved into a brand new house, and he had asked me if I would come assess the Wi-Fi in the house. And because he had, let's see, 4 levels in the house. He had a basement, first, second, and third floors. And so he had his home office was on the second floor. So he had his bedroom on the second floor, and then you walked out a door onto like a little courtyard. Then you walked through another door, which was his office. And it was really cool. It was a great layout. I mean, this was a big, big house. And so I had set up all the internet equipment in his office. So I had the modem up there. I had the Wi-Fi device. And we knew the Wi-Fi wasn't getting all the way down to the basement. So we thought, okay, we need to put in some booster technology. It was getting up to the third floor okay, but it was not getting down to the basement. So I bought the booster technology, plugged the one into the modem in his office, and took the other one and down to the basement, plugged it into an electrical outlet. They wouldn't talk to each other. And I tore my hair out about this for a couple of hours. And he finally came home, and I said, this just isn't working. And I sat down and I explained to him the technology and how it was supposed to work. And he looked at me and he says, well, I know why it's not working. And I said, well, please enlighten me. Why isn't it working? Well, because the portion of the house where he had his home office, the courtyard that I talked about, and the office that was next to it were an addition to the house. It wasn't the original part of the house. And it was, they had to put a totally separate electrical circuit there. So the electrical circuit in the office did not communicate or have any connection at all to the electrical circuit in the main part of the house. And so it kind of an unusual circumstance, but it was not a fun situation, believe me. But once we figured that out, I was able to move all the networking equipment into the bedroom instead of the office, and then we got the boosters in the basement, and it worked out great. And I don't remember what size this house was. I bet it was at least 3,500 square feet. It was pretty big, maybe 4,000 square feet. But we finally got that running, and they were happy campers. So when you're just putting Wi-Fi in your home, or you're getting new internet service, whatever the case is, it's really important where you place your modem and your router. These days, a lot of the internet services, the Comcast and the CenturyLink, they will I'm sorry. I digress. I just got a message from Kelly in the chat room, which I can't see because I totally screwed up my screen, and I'm really sorry. Beth is in there, and she says, "Hello, Mary. Here and eager to hear your Wi-Fi tips." We have been working on Beth's Wi-Fi as well. I apologize. It's now that time of the show when my dog starts whining at the door, so I'm going to ignore her. But anyway, placement of your Wi-Fi router. Placement of your router is really important. So I was saying, Comcast and CenturyLink, they are now, if you rent boxes from them, they are bundling the modem with the router, Wi-Fi router technology into one box. That's kind of new over the past 2 or 3 years. So placement of that box is really important. If the box has the vertical antennas, it's really important that the antennas are sticking straight up in the air. The signal on these antennas will beam out to the sides, both sides, so it'll beam out both ways, and the signal will travel that way. If for some reason the antennas are laying flat, your signal is going to go to the ground, to the floor, or up, which is fine if you've got a second story. But you know, that signal going into the ground just does you no good, and the area all around you is not going to get that signal. And from what I said earlier, we know that signal travels in a straight line. So it's important that the antennas are sticking vertically up. So that's the first thing you want to do. And a lot of people, the method I'm talking to you about now is called the VOICE method, V-O-I-C-E. So V stands for vertical antennas sticking straight up. O stands for obstructions. You want to make sure there's as few obstructions as possible. So if you've placed your modem / router next to a brick wall or a cement wall, that signal is going to go boom right into the cement wall, and it's not going to go any further. The signal out here is going to go, but this way it's not going to go anywhere. So you want to make sure that you place that device kind of centrally in the house. And I know that can be a challenge, because when you are moving into a house and you've got the internet provider there to install everything, you know, a lot of times they're going to put that equipment in the room where it's convenient for them. And it may not be convenient for you. And the technicians who install this technology, they kind of know where proper placement is, but sometimes it means that it makes their job a lot harder. And it's you don't run into too many people who go the extra mile and run the cable necessary to get that internet jack in the place where it's best for your modem. So you kind of have to be proactive there. And so in the VOICE method, V, vertical antennas, O for obstructions, I stands for interference. Now, your Wi-Fi routers have channels. And depending on the channel technology, it could be channels 1 through 11, which would be like your wireless end technology. And they're all programmed to find the best channel. And let's see if I can remember. I think it's channel 3, channel 6, and channel 11 are the most popular. I usually go in and I will get into the programming of the router, and I will look at the channels. And I also have on one of my little tablets, this is my, what is this? This is a Nexus 7. It's an Android tablet. And I have a piece of software on here that will read all the channels in the area and tell me which ones are the most used. So I'll have a little graph that will say, oh, channel 5 has, you know, these 5 different routers on it. So all of your neighbors are using channel 5 on their Wi-Fi routers. But on the graph it may say, oh, channel 11 nobody's using. So I'll go in and I'll reprogram the router to use that less used channel. And so that's pretty much the only thing I use this little tablet for. I don't know why, because it's a great little tablet. I really do like it, but that's what I use that for. So you want to make sure that you're using a channel that's not widely used. The VLIC stands for central location, and we've already talked about that. You want to make sure that it's planted centrally in your house. And E in the voice method is elevated. So it's usually best if you place that Wi-Fi router as high as possible. So if you have a room where you're putting it that has a high shelf, it's usually best if you place it on that high shelf, because the signals really prefer to travel down more than they prefer to travel up. In my office here, I'm on the second story of my house, and I've got my Wi-Fi router sitting on a shelf right behind me. Now, if I really wanted to, I could put it on a shelf high up here, but then I've got wires that are exposed and it kind of looks funky. So I've just got it on a little shelf behind me, but it's still broadcasting its channel down to the lower half of the house, and I seem to have really good coverage on the upper half of the house. So, so I'm happy with it. It's good for me. But if you can have your Wi-Fi router sitting as high as possible, that would be awesome. So if anybody has any questions about Wi-Fi technology, tips or tricks, that would be awesome. Oh, another thing I wanted to tell you about. I had a customer this week who, it was interesting. We were trying to troubleshoot why her laptop wasn't staying connected to the internet. And it would stay connected fine if we had it plugged, wired into the router. But the Wi-Fi was really kind of weak. And, it was a laptop, built-in Wi-Fi. And, I finally said to her, I said, I think you need to make a trip to Best Buy and pick up an external Wi-Fi device for your laptop. And they come in, I don't think I have any sitting here, but they can come. Now, this is a dongle for a mouse, but they can be as small as this. They'll always be USB devices, and they'll just plug into a USB port. And the minute you plug it in, the computer recognizes it, and it will install its little driver, and you will disable the internal Wi-Fi on your laptop and then pick up your Wi-Fi through the external device. And so she did that, and she reported back to me yesterday that her signal was great. Her laptop was happy anywhere in the house. And these little things, you can get them for $30, $40, $45, depending on the manufacturer and the model, but they're wonderful little things. So if the Wi-Fi technology inside of your laptop is starting to go a little wonky, one of these little devices will really save you, and they're fabulous devices. So I would suggest that if you're also having problems. The other story I have for you about Wi-Fi, this was really interesting. This was probably, I don't know, last fall sometime. And I have a client who has quite a big house out here in the country in Vancouver. And so they said to me, Mary, you need to come out to the house. We're having problems with our internet. We really want Wi-Fi, but we just can't figure it out. So I went out there, and they had quite a big house. We're talking probably at least 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. And down on the bottom level, when you first go in the house, you walk in the house, and to the left, immediately to the left, was the office. Right in front of you was the staircase that went upstairs. So I looked in the office, and I saw this wire snaking out of the office, and it was going up to the stairwell up on the second story. And so it was kind of draped over the railing on the stairwell, across the hall, into the bedroom, and plugged into the TV so they could watch Netflix when they went to bed. And I said, first of all, I said, where did you get such a long wire? And, how clever of you to think of that. But, your guests come in the house and they see this wire snaking all over the place. And I said, we have to get rid of that wire. And they agreed with me. They were tired of dealing with the wire, and they were tired of, tripping over the wire in the upstairs hallway. So I went out and bought them one of those high-powered wireless AC routers with the 8 antennas sticking up. And we put it, I think we might have put it, I don't remember now whether we put it in the office or upstairs, but at any rate, we installed it. It was so powerful that we didn't need a booster. And I had my little device here, so I changed the channel that it was broadcasting on. They had quite a big piece of property, so there wasn't too much interference. But so I was also able to take this device, and I walked out into the backyard, walked onto the deck. They had a gazebo further out in the yard. Walked out there. I was still getting a strong signal out there. So, you know, those high-powered AC Wi-Fi routers will give you a lot of coverage without having to boost the signal. So I think that's all I have for stories on Wi-Fi. So hopefully I've given you all the information you need to know about Wi-Fi. I'm checking. I don't see any people with questions here. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I run across this all the time, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it, has to do with passwords. I deal with a lot of clients. I deal with a lot of small businesses, but I also deal with a lot of individuals. And oftentimes they'll have me come into their home to work on their technology. And we might be maybe installing a new laptop, installing a new computer, maybe they've got a new tablet we're installing. And at some point in time, we have to configure their email. So one of the first things I'll say to them is, okay, I'm going to need to know what your email password is. And you'd be surprised at how many people say to me, well, I don't have an email password. I've never had an email password. I don't need an email password. I've never used an email password. And it's, so I have to sit down and explain to them that, yes, you do have an email password. You can't possibly create any sort of email account or account for any sort of web site or service without having a password. So managing passwords is really difficult. And a lot of times on these jobs that I'm doing, I could spend a half hour with a client going through the whole forgot password routine to get their email password back. And, and then there's usually a couple of different websites that we have to go to if we're installing a Windows 10 computer. Oftentimes they've tried the install themselves and it hasn't worked out so well. So it required them to create a Microsoft account to tie their computer to. Doesn't require, although they've gone ahead and done that, but they don't write their passwords down. Interesting story about this, and I've seen it in action. And Beth says, yes, suggestions on passwords. So anyway, interesting story about passwords. A couple of days ago, somebody very, very close to me had received their new Citibank Visa card, the Costco replacement card. And so what she did was she went ahead and she went through the whole web process where she activated the credit card and did the whole thing where it asked her to create her secret question. It asked her to create a password for her account on their website. And she got through this whole process. It took her about a half hour, 45 minutes. And at the end of the process, she says, okay, now how do I log into my account? And I said, well, what was the password that you created? Well, I don't know. And I said, didn't you write it down? And she said, no. So we had to spend, some time going through the whole password reset process. So, okay, so I'm going to try and give you some best practices on password management. And I think we've probably all heard a lot of these before, but best practices. So, they tell you never to use the same password twice. And that's a really good rule of thumb. So I kind of have a method on my passwords where I come up with maybe a phrase. And whatever that phrase is, based on the website that I'm creating a password for. So say I'm creating a password for Facebook. Okay, so whatever my phrase is, somewhere in the middle of that phrase, I will put the 3 letters FAC. And then I might put a number next to it. But I've got the same phrase for every single password I use, but somewhere in that password, I've got the first 3 characters of the website. And like I said, I'll embed a number in there somewhere so that no matter what website I'm logging into, I've got a different password that I haven't used for any other website. And but it's easy for me to remember, but really difficult for somebody else to remember. Now, the downside about that practice is that you really have to keep that a secret. You can't be telling anybody what your method is, because once they know what your method is, they can figure out the password for any website you're going to go to. So, don't write this down on a piece of paper. You've got to come up with your method, and you've got to keep it unwritten. It's got to be in your head. And so that's what I use. So I never have the same password. So what I do with my passwords is you want to make them a little complex. You want a mixture of upper and lowercase letters, and you might want to include a number somewhere and a special symbol. And so as long as you have your method and you stick to that method, you're going to be fine. The other thing I do with passwords, how are we doing for time? We're doing good. The other thing I do with passwords is I use password management software. I have dozens, if not hundreds of websites that I have accounts for that I log into. And it's and I may be logging in and out of these websites all day long. And I don't want to have to stop and type my username and then type my password for the website. I just want to click a button and get in. Because it really can waste a lot of time. When you're talking about, several dozen websites that you might go into on a particular day, if you have to spend 10 or 15 seconds typing the login and password for each site, it really does add up in terms of time. So I use a piece of software called Dashlane. It's password management software, and here's how it works. And there's others out there, and I've used others out there, but Dashlane came along and I tested it out and I really liked it. I used to use RoboForm before that, and RoboForm is a really good piece of software as well. But the premise for this piece of software, Dashlane and RoboForm, is you create an account on their website, and then you download the software onto your computer. And as you log into a website, it will ask you if you want to create what they call a passcard for that website, which stores your login and your password. And so you do. So the next time you go to that website, it automatically logs you in. And then it will sync that information up to your account on the web, and you can then put Dashlane on any of your other devices and get into your website from there. So here's where the security comes in. Okay, I'll get to that question in a minute. Thanks, Kelly. So you have a master password for your Dashlane account that says, okay, when you first turn on your computer, you log into your Dashlane account. And as long as you're sitting there and working on your computer and you go to a website, it will log you in. If you've had inactive time for maybe an hour or two, you're going to have to log into your master password again. If you open up your Dashlane software, which has listings of all your logins and passwords, it masks the password so you can't see it right away if you go into the software. If you click on Show Password, you have to type your master password every single time you want it to show you a password, which can really be a pain, but it is really, really secure. Other tips for you is do not leave pieces of paper sitting around your desk with your logins and passwords. For the most part, nobody's going to come into my house and want to log into my computer. But better safe than sorry. You still have a lot to use if you're just Jane Doe or John Doe sitting there at your computer. People can get into your bank accounts, your credit card accounts. You don't want people to get into this stuff. So don't leave that stuff lying around. Do not create a document on your computer called passwords and then put all your passwords in there. If somebody does get into your computer, like the organized crime in Eastern Europe, if you call their number and you let them into your system, the very first thing they're going to do is do a search on your computer for a file called passwords. And the minute they find it, they're going to download it. And now they've got entry into every single one of the websites that you have in there. And it could be a disaster. So if you are going to keep a document on your computer, two things I would suggest. Name it something obscure that nobody would ever want to take a look at it. You know, test results or doctor's test results or, you know, vet results or, you know, something that nobody would have any interest in looking at. And the other thing I might suggest, and this was a suggestion from a client, is put all that information in the document and then highlight all the text and change the font to white, so that when somebody actually does open that document, they're curious and they want to see if there's anything in there, they don't see anything. So that would be my suggestion. So those are my best practices. So Kelly has said somebody in the chat room they're confused by hearing about G and M routers and G2, G5. Can you explain? G and M router. Okay, so wireless G is the technology I was talking about earlier, which came out in, I think it was, what was it, 1999? It was probably about 2000, 2001. Very old, slow technology. If anybody has a wireless G router out there, it basically just stands for the incremental number that they're assigning to the type of Wi-Fi as it progresses through the years. So wireless G, very old technology. If you have a wireless G router, you need to replace it with a wireless M or wireless AC. Wireless M routers. I'm not sure what a wireless M router is. Maybe they're thinking about wireless N. So wireless N is newer technology that's perfectly okay to use. You're going to get some really good speeds out of that. G2 and G5. I have no idea what they mean by G2 or G5. So from my knowledge, I don't know of any kind of Wi-Fi standard that's G2 or G5. So, but if you see wireless G, if you have a G attached to any Wi-Fi, you want to replace the box. So that's kind of my advice. So thank you for that question. That was good. So we are looking at, yeah, we're just about done here. So I just want to say I am really, really glad for the opportunity to pass on this information to you. Thanks for the questions that the few people have thrown out in the chat room. It's been fun. I wish I wouldn't have destroyed my chat room. It's somewhere on my computer and I can't find it. I need a computer diva. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to say thank you so much for listening. Oh, housekeeping thing that we have going on here. My next show is scheduled to be 2 weeks from tonight, but I'm going to be on vacation in California. So I'm not sure when I'm rescheduling that show. Might do a special show right after that. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. So keep tuned to Facebook, my Computer Diva page, where I usually post the dates and times of the show, but it's usually every other Thursday at 7 p.m. So thank you to all of you who are listening or watching live. Thank you to those of you in the chat room. I appreciate your questions. And if you are watching this recording a week from now, thank you too. I really appreciate, no matter how you want to watch this show, whether it's live or recorded, I really appreciate it. And thank you to Kelly Lair, who is the producer behind the scenes. Kelly Lair is from New 72 Media, who produces this show, and I really appreciate everything she does to keep this show running smooth. And even though she can't reach through the computer and stop me from clicking on a window to close my chat room, thank you, Kelly. I appreciate your efforts. So with that, I will say good night. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.